to Mr. Otter Studio. Today I'm going to show you how to make these simple stained glass angels. And the thing I really like about these is you can just use small pieces of glass that maybe were leftovers from a window. When I was 21, for a year and a half, I lived in Poland and I taught people about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so yes, I learned to speak Polish there. And I also picked up one of these stained glass angels as I was walking around one of the cities that I served in, and I hung it in my window in every different apartment that I had in Poland, and then again when I got home. And then I ended up working in a stained glass studio. And when I was working in this stained glass studio, they throw away a ton of glass. I mean, boxes and boxes of glass that was maybe too small to use in a large window. And so like this is literally the only remnants I have left from that. But I had boxes and boxes, and I would give it to friends or whoever needed some glass for whatever project. So this is just the last remaining bits of glass from that job I had over 10 years ago, 11 years ago. So anyway, I just love, I mean, you can see there's definitely pieces in here you could use for angel wings. And the bodies. And so anyway, I would just get the glass and separate it into colors, and then I would use the bits of glass. They're great for mosaics or making angels or any other little project that you might be working on. So I really like the idea of reusing these pieces that were too small for maybe a larger window. And then my mom and I one winter made a ton of these angels and gave them to our neighbors. So I'm just going to show you how. You do need basic stained glass supplies. And it's pretty cold tonight, so you're going to hear my heater on, and I also have windows open since I am making stained glass. So sorry about the noise, and also my sound is just really terrible, but just bear with me. Hopefully you can still learn how to do this even if my sound is not great tonight. You need a soldering iron. Then you need copper foil. I'm going to be using the copper foil method for these. It works really well. You can't really use the channel method for something small like this. Then you need solder, and I'm just going to be using this actually to wrap this wire around. This is zinc wire, and I'm going to be using it for the halo of the angel. And I found this at a stained glass place, but you could probably find this at craft stores, maybe. You need flux and something to brush it on. You can use liquid flux as well. When I worked at a stained glass studio, we didn't use the paste, we used the liquid. You need a glass cutter if you want to cut the wings to be a better shape. A breaker, you know, to break off little pieces to make it the right shape if you're going to be cutting. And then these nippers just work really well to get you can cut your copper foil with it, and there's a bunch of different things to use it for, but that's mainly what I use it for. And you need stained glass pieces. You could just buy big sheets and then cut it into smaller pieces if you wanted, or you can do what I did and just find scraps of glass from other projects and use those. And then I just use these glass beads, and these will be the heads. You might want to use round ones. If you like things to be exact, you might want to just choose round. These are definitely not a perfect shape. But you need basically a piece of glass for the body and a piece of glass for the wings. And really quick, let me take this off the wall. These are just some different designs that I've seen. And this little line up here is the wire, and then this is the bead. So this is space in between these. It's not like another piece of glass. This is, you could go through that top part, but there's different kinds of wings you could do and a lot of different fun things. You might want a Sharpie if you want to trace your patterns onto the glass. If you have really dark glass, you could use a gold Sharpie, a white Sharpie, something that's going to show up on there a little bit better. So choose your glass, and then the second thing you're going to do is cut the glass. Flat part on top, curved part on bottom. Just kind of play around with it and figure out the best position for the wings. And there's no right or wrong with these wings. You can just cut out however you feel like that shape needs to be. Curved goes on the bottom. So I have all of my pieces. Now it's time to wrap the copper foil around them and then add flux and solder them together. So this time, instead of doing it on my table and ruining it even more than I already did, I'm just gonna be putting a piece of glass under them. So sorry, you're gonna see me and you're gonna see my light, but this is the best solution I can come up with this late at night. So I'm sorry about this. And I don't know if I need to show you copper foiling. Just remember, when you're adding the copper foiling, you can watch my video about it. Just try to keep it even on both sides and nice and smooth. So let's go ahead and we'll just wrap these up, and then we are going to solder them together. I'm just gonna give you some quick tips. I already did this in part of this, but maybe I'll give them to you again just in case that part didn't work. What you wanna do is what I like to do is I kind of wrap the copper foil around my piece, leaving like a 1/4 inch more than I actually need. I just use my nippers, nip it. That's how I cut it. And then you're just going to take the backing off, so it's like you're working with tape. Make sure your piece is in the middle, and you don't want to like start at an edge. You want to have a little bit of an overlap like that. If you stick the copper foil tape and it's not even, you do have time to move it and make it a little bit straighter, because you want the same amount on this side as you have on this side. So that's why I like to kind of look at it from the top down, just to make sure it's even on both sides. And then just leave a little bit of overlap. You don't need as much as I have here. You want it to overlap like, I don't know, like an 1/8 of an inch maybe? But you do want it to hug the glass. And one thing I forgot to do was, it's a good idea to clean off your glass after you cut it off and before you add copper foil, because if you don't, the copper foil might not stick very well to your glass and you're gonna have some parts where it lifts off of the glass, and that is a definite problem. You do not want that. If that happens, it's just gonna be frustrating. So after you add it on, make sure it overlaps, and then press it down all the way around. And do the same thing with every single piece you have. So this piece might be hard for some of you. So let me just kind of show you how I would handle it, and just kind of help you troubleshoot some of the problems that you might have. It's gonna be slippery. I would definitely use nippers. You don't want to work with a huge piece of foil when you're doing something this small, because it tends to pull in the opposite direction. So take the backing off of it. The thing with these beads is there's a flat side and there's a rounded side. So you want it as even as you can get it on the flat side. That's usually the one that I try to pay attention to, because it's the only side that like makes sense, I guess, has consistency. And then you want to just press it down, bend it in as much as you can. Remember, the rounded part is the front. So the flat part is the back, the rounded part is the front. And we're gonna try to make this as smooth as we can. And these are halos, so let's go ahead and cut out 2 of them. And this is just zinc wire that I'm cutting. Okay, and then you can use any round object. I'm just using this lid, so I'm just kind of bending the wire around it and kind of taking it out. And then you can figure out how you would like, if you want it to be this way, you want it to look a little bit taller, and then maybe pinch it in a little bit, maybe a little bit more. Okay, and then you figure out where you want to cut it. Grab your nippers, and you might need to cut it at a little bit of an angle Just hold on to the piece that you want to keep because this zinc wire is pretty, at least the kind that I have is pretty tough and it flies everywhere. Okay, and I want to make sure that it looks rounded. So I'm just going to use my breakers, since I don't have pliers, and I'm going to bend this in right here. Just so it's bent in a little bit. I don't want, there we go. So that's just a little halo, but that's okay. I like it. Okay, once you have covered all of your pieces with copper foil, you are ready to solder them together. So what you want to do is get your flux, whether you're using liquid or paste, and you want to place it. My flux brush is melted because I used it to clean off my soldering iron. And you want to just place flux on the copper foil around each piece. I think liquid might be the preferred method for me. I'm learning that. And I would start on the back of your piece and then finish on the front side. Okay, once you get flux around those pieces, let's move it this way. We are going to start on the front side since we're using the beads. The beads are flat on the back and round on the top, so we really can't start from the back side. And now my soldering iron has been heating up for a while and it's kind of clean. Not really, but let's just pretend it is. Make sure you pull enough of the soldering out that you're not gonna have your hand too close to it because this heats up really fast. And the first thing I do is I like to just put it on these joints, these areas that are connectors. Right here. And then I'll kind of show you what I do around the wings. I'll zoom in on this in just a second. Maybe just I'll add a little bit on this side up here. And also, don't just touch this with your finger because it is very hot. Sometimes I'll use, I wish I had my gloves. I have some gloves that are heat resistant, but I'm just gonna use like my nippers to just like hold this down. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of start melting this down a little bit where I made this joint, and I'm dragging. Because I want this to be really smooth, but I do need it up around. So do you see I'm just kind of dragging it? Almost like I'm using my soldering iron as a paintbrush on that copper foil. Like I don't want any gloppy parts like that. I want it to be a really smooth transition. And then I'm just gonna drag it all the way around. I still have flux on this. If you need more, you can always just take a break, get some more flux. And when I say flux, I mean solder. Get some more solder on to the glass, just so that you have enough to drag around. Because this isn't like in between a window. You don't need as much as you would if you were connecting other glass pieces to this. Whoa, we don't want those to stick together. Okay, so I'm just gonna pull this. And if it gets too thick, you can kind of pull it off carefully. And sometimes you can't even see it, but there's solder on my soldering iron. And that's what I'm just dragging along the copper foil. But think of it as jewelry. Like, does that look good? You know, no, it's like way too thick here. There we go. And we don't want like a bumpy line up there, or maybe this bumpy line right here. Just a little distracting. So I'm just gonna smooth it out. Okay, and try to make sure that you've gotten some of it on these edges. but not in globs like that was globby. You might have to kind of turn it in a few different angles. It gets a little hard to see sometimes. Yeah, like I don't have any on the top of this. Or top of that. Just kind of look at it and make sure you've gotten most of the parts that you can see. Then you're gonna flip it around and do the other side. So I'm gonna let this one sit for a minute while I work on the next one. Now remember, we are just going to add the solder to those connecting joints. You want your pieces as tight together as you can get them. That's the nice thing about using a wood board to do this, and I wish I had one. You can use little nails to kind of keep these in their places. So none of this moving around that I've got going on here. Angel number one, and I'm gonna flip it over. I would grab Flux and just like really quickly maybe touch up some of these areas where it may have come off. And again, I feel like liquid Flux is way better than this. So then we're just doing the same thing. We're kind of getting those joints. Once you do the back side, you want to let it cool and then touch up the front side. Flip it over to the front side and then clean up any of these parts like this that came up. And you can even just kind of move them up to the side. You definitely want to keep it nice and pretty. So don't let those drips interfere with your clean lines that you had on there. And if you get these big drips, I just sometimes try to like pull them off. And see how it kind of bubbles up? So just look around the edges, make sure they look nice and smooth. If there's any glops, get them off. And other than that, this is finished, this angel. And now you are finished. My favorite thing to do is to hang these in a window or to kind of like just put them in a little box and give them as a gift for the holidays. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below any problems you had. I would love to try to help you with that. But I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful holiday season.